A very good afternoon. Welcome to The Nation. I'm Tamina Kausji in our studios at the Bernama News Channel, and for today's episode of The Nation, we focus on education. Now, education, of course, being the backbone of any country, Malaysia included, with a special emphasis on how we can help our youth and students to become more entrepreneurial. We have, with that in mind, in the house today with us, Dr. Tawfique Chowdhury, who is the principal of Seven Skies International School, to share with us some perspectives on this very pertinent issue. Welcome to studios, Dr. Tawfique. How are you?
Pleasure, thank you. It's my great pleasure to be back again.
That's right, exactly. I mean, I think it's great that you've taken the time to come in once again so that we can further explore some of the topics that you touched upon with the guiding principles behind Seven Skies. Now, you yourself, sir, are the principal of Seven Skies International, SSI, which is an international Islamic school. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how it is you found yourself within this industry, being a doctor medically?
Right, so a little bit about myself. I am a medical doctor. I work in the emergency department in the trauma section.
Right.
This is in Australia. I grew up in Australia, went into medicine to study, didn't really finish my medical degree.
Right.
Then I got accepted overseas to study in Medina, so I studied judicial law there.
I see, right.
Studied that for about 6 years. Then I decided to come back to Australia. That's when I restarted my medical study again.
I see, right.
So the second time, actually, I started medicine from zero, basically. So I restarted medicine again. That's when I launched an organization called Mercy Mission, which was focused on social entrepreneurship in the Muslim sector.
I see, how interesting. And what inspired you through whatever experiences that you'd had to actually launch Mercy Missions in the first place?
Well, you know, in some ways it was me searching for my own purpose and my own legacy that I wanted to leave behind. And as I was in Medina, that's where, you know, our Prophet lived. You know, it struck me that to follow this man would not be simply to just pray how he prayed or fast how he fasted.
Right.
We should do with our life what he would have done had he been alive. And what would he have done? He would have either taught people or helped people. So I said, I'm going to launch an organization that's socially entrepreneurial, that focuses on the Muslim sector in the topic of education and social services, helping people or educating people.
Right.
And that's where Mercy Mission came about. That's whilst I was a medical student in Australia.
Oh wow!
So we launched a lot of projects worldwide, and one of them is the Seven Skies School here in Malaysia. So I moved to Malaysia about 5 years ago.
I see.
That's when I began to take a bit of a step back from working full-time in medicine. And I launched a lot of projects from here and did a lot of social activities from here as our headquarters. One of them is this school that we launched, which was in 2014.
Right.
We crowdfunded for the funds from the public.
Oh wow!
We
That's
encouraged.
very interesting.
Yeah. So you know, a lot of social entrepreneurial projects start with crowdfunding.
That's right.
And so I crowdfunded about 3 million ringgit, and then we simply launched a concept that we feel was what people were after. I mean, I myself have 7 children.
Right.
6 of them are school going at the moment.
Okay.
Yeah, so I needed a way to teach them. So I looked at the education model over here. You either get really good academic education, but
That's right.
there's absolutely no religious attachment to it, or you get a lot of religious education but no real prominence in your academics.
Right.
And
a very valid point indeed.
Right. And so there was this this gap in the market, and a lot of expats are looking for it. A lot of Malaysians are actually looking for it. And so I found that there was this need, and a lot of people were after it. And so we built the school, and I have a vested interest in it. My own 6 kids are going there.
All right. I think that's the best testament that you have, really.
Yeah,
your
I mean,
own
if you don't,
children study at SSI.
Right, if you don't believe in your own product, and you don't,
That's true.
Don't put your own kids into it, how can you trust it? So we found that now, you know, the upper middle class of Malaysian society has actually caught on to the Seven Skies idea.
Right, okay.
And so almost 80% of the 150 children in the school are actually Malaysians.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
Right,
So
right.
even though it's an international school, but you do accept Malaysian students.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Right.
And 80% are actually Malaysian students. And though the teachers might be about, you know, approximately 40 to 50% are actually foreign teachers.
Right.
and you might have about 20-30% of Middle Eastern teachers for the Arabic and Islamic components. And then you have about 15 to 20% are actually local Malaysian teachers.
Right.
That's the makeup of the school at present.
I see. Now, when you speak about it being, of course, SSI, an international school, what type of syllabus does SSI actually profess for the students?
So we want to produce children that have God consciousness in the heart and the world in their hands. We call it Allah in the heart and the world in your hands.
Right.
So we thought, how are we going to produce children that are like that? So we said, okay, let's have a 3-part curriculum.
Okay.
So we would have the academics being taken care of with the IGCSE, the Cambridge qualification of O levels and A levels that are popular here in Malaysia.
That's right. So that would, of course, be the British education
That's
system.
the British education system, and that's
Okay.
your 55% of your curriculum goes there.
Right.
Then you have people when we want the knowledge of their connection with God. And so that is where 30% of the curriculum approximately goes towards Islamic history and learning about the Quran and learning about the Prophet's biography and about morals and manners. So
see,
that would be
right.
about 30% of the curriculum. Then about approximately 20% of the curriculum is about character education and personality development. Because what I've found in my life is that it doesn't necessarily matter how much your marks are. What
Right.
matters is your behavior in society. How you behave as a human being is how you're perceived. So as a medical doctor,
Right.
I could just be a medical doctor, or I could be the head of department.
True
And so
enough.
how do I become head of department? Not necessarily because I have more researchers or I'm the most smartest doctor in the room.
Right.
You know, in the house, for example, in the show,
Exactly.
House is not the head of the department. You know what I'm saying? The head of the hospital
No, he
is someone
isn't.
who is good at managing people, who is good at business, who's an entrepreneur, who is a good manager, a good leader. So how can you build a child with these qualities?
Right. I think
Right.
that is, of course, the perennial question of all education today.
Yes.
Especially with parents investing so much more than they used to for quality education.
Absolutely. And what
Right.
we're finding, it gets to a level where marks don't really matter as much in the excellence you achieve in life. It matters how you speak to people, how you behave with others, how you understand risks in society, how you manage money, how you manage yourself as a human being, how you negotiate, how do you deal
Right.
with conflict situations and difficult conversations. And these are issues, all of these things to do with personality is what we focus on. We call it the character and personality development of the school. And that's why our motto is character before excellence.
Right.
Meaning focus on the personality and character of the child before the educational excellence, which was a lifelong process, with all due respect.
Right, understood indeed. Now, it's
Yeah.
very interesting that, of course, I would say you're definitely one of the first few centers, especially for the primary, secondary education level, of introducing this concept in Malaysia. How was the reception initially from Malaysian parents, especially, who came in to have a look at your facilities and understand your curriculum? What did they have to say?
Right. Well, you know, I mean, like a typical parent, any parent is worried about the grades. And
Naturally,
they're worried
yes.
about, you know, how good is education. When they mean education, they mean the grades. They mean especially O levels and A levels.
That's right.
And because we're just about to sit our first batch of O level students next year.
Right, I see.
So they haven't got that agenda yet, or that benchmark yet of how the school is academically.
Right.
So that was the focus of the parents at that point in time, is what are the marks and what is my child going to get in math, science and English.
Yes.
So it's been a bit of a challenge trying to say, you know what, hey guys, you know, I'm a medical doctor. My own grades, whilst I was in my year 12, my A-level equivalence in Australia,
Okay.
was 99.85. I came third in all of Australia, the third highest in Australian grades.
Okay, right.
But that
fair
has
enough.
not made me the richest man of Malaysia.
Right.
Does that make sense? Nor the most influential man. I'm not the Prime Minister of Malaysia yet. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So
got it.
it's
Okay.
not about the marks simply that make you who you are. It's also about how you behave in society, what gets you to the excellence in society. So it's been a struggle trying to explain to parents that grades is not what only matters. What actually matters is how your children behave, what vision they have in their life, how they will behave in whatever job or whatever degree they end up doing. You can be a
Right.
doctor, yes, but how do you become a pioneering doctor or a head of department? How do you go from simply a doctor that just, you know, works for his own self and gets his, you know, 100,000 ringgit a month salary, to someone who genuinely wants to help humanity?
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So it's a very
Exactly.
different type of focus point And so it's been a challenge, really. But I think after now, we're now about 2.5 years in operations, the
That's
third
right.
year. I think we have now a group of parents who are genuinely beginning to appreciate that this form of education, focus on their character, actually produces better results, even academically.
In the long run, you
In the
mean?
long run, yeah. Let me give you a simple example.
Sure.
So a child, when they grow up, they spend a particular amount of time studying their academics, but a lot
Yes.
more time is wasted in running after the pleasures of being a child, or the distractions, really. And bad influences, whether that be drugs or addictions, whether you're addicted to, I don't know, smoking, or you're getting attracted to girls and sex and rock and roll and whatever else, the distractions that take our teens and our youth away from being productive. Yes.
Right. It could even be something as simple as being addicted to your devices, internet.
Oh yes. I mean, the average time a teenager in the West watches TV is 4 hours a day. Can you
Right.
imagine?
It's a lot of
TV.
screen time.
Now imagine your iPhone and your apps.
Exactly.
right?
Added on to that.
Added on to that. So we said, how can we make the child more productive? If we actually made the child understand that society has other priorities, we opened
Right.
up their vision, and we said, listen, you don't exist in this earth only to earn money for yourself, but you exist to help others,
Right.
have a more fulfilling life. And that is how you will find contentment and you will find pleasure. I mean, yes, there's enjoyment in buying a Porsche car, but there is an enjoyment in putting food in the mouth of an orphan, and that you cannot measure in
Right.
terms of that, and that's more exciting than buying a new house and having a credit card with no limit. And buying a new Porsche car is to put food in the mouth of an orphan and to put dignity back in the face of a mother who has no milk left in her breast for her child, to give water to a thirsty animal, to plant a tree, to know that on the day that you die, that you've actually had an impact, and you've left behind a message that on that day, not only your family will cry, but a whole nation will cry with you,
Right.
and that they will truly miss you. Because today, if you were to suddenly not exist anymore, people would say, I miss that man, or I miss that woman. But otherwise, if you live for yourself, no one would ever miss you. And the new generation of the Y and the X
And beyond.
yeah, and beyond. Yeah, I don't know, is there anything after Z generation?
The
I don't know.
millennials, I think that's what they
yeah.
call them. Yes.
So the millennials, they want to change the world. They don't want to simply exist for themselves. Our parents, perhaps, they wanted to ensure that their children have a good life. But
That's
we,
right.
in our generation, we want to also not only have a good life, but also have an impact on this world. So there are
Exactly.
many common issues that are problematic, whether that be pollution, whether that be infectious diseases, whether that be domestic violence, child labor, poverty, food scarcity, right? There are so many issues that we need to now focus on. And if we can inspire our children to focus on this before just simply looking after themselves, they would have more fulfilling lives, I believe.
That's right. I mean, of course, I definitely agree that there are so many broader topics which education, especially for up to the high school level, doesn't often target, because it's often assumed that the home's influence would be enough for this,
Right,
and the
right.
school is all about just getting your
Right.
A's, or, at the very least passing and doing that rightly.
You've said it perfectly, exactly right. And that is the mentality at the moment. Saying
Right.
schools is for grades and the home is for values and everything else. No, schools is for vision. For me, school is what makes you. It sets your culture, it sets your agenda, your personality. And if a school does not do that, if all it does is teaches you math, science, and English, I'm sorry, but Khan Academy can do that for you now. You don't need a school. You just need curiosity, and Khan Academy with a good internet connection, you can learn all your maths and science and English.
Exactly, right.
Right?
Now, on that note, very interesting topic so far, definitely, but we take a quick commercial break, and when we're back, still with Dr. Tawfique, digging a little deeper into how Seven Skies International helps to bring about these values in its students. Stay with us. Welcome back to Nation. So we're still on the topic of speaking on international school education, in particular Seven Skies International, which is a brand new player and also doing things very differently from the regular international school. Of course, with me, Dr. Tawfique Chowdhury, helping us explore the topic. Now, Doctor, so as we were saying, now one of the key components of SSI's academics or general curriculum is character development.
Yes.
Now, as you said, you have your modules set out very clearly clearly. Can you tell us a little bit in particular about the character development module and how it is that all of the values, the bigger picture, how does your staff and how does your academic curriculum help your students to understand this?
Right. I think education starts off with very good educators.
Right.
So the first
Agreed.
principle that we have in the school is to ensure that our teachers have very upright character. So we are quite meticulous in the way we choose our teachers. We don't simply look for academic excellence or a track record in a particular area. We look for their ability to bring out excellent pedagogy with the character of the child. So that's really critical. And I test that out. And that's why I headhunt people. And sometimes when I find someone who's actually really good at that, I will train him to be a teacher rather than find a teacher and then train him to be an educator. Does that make sense?
It does,
yeah.
it does.
So it's a little bit of a different approach, and that's why we might bring in someone who is a completely fresh teacher, but then train them to be a teacher simply because that person is a phenomenal entrepreneur, or that person is a phenomenal principled individual with in terms of his values and morals.
I see.
So that's very critical.
Right.
Secondly, the curriculum itself is actually multi-pronged. Three important parts to it. First part is to introduce the children to a lot of the social evils that exist in society.
Right,
So
rather than not talking about them at all, which
Yeah.
is generally the mode that is taken in most education systems.
Correct. And you
Right.
think that, oh no, don't break the innocence, don't tell them about poverty and war and whatever else. They're too innocent to learn about. That's not true. Children are far more educated. In one day, we get more information than our grandparents got in the whole lifetime.
Right.
So they're going to hear about wars in Syria and the Rohingya problem. They're going to hear about Donald Trump and his opinions. Come on, they're going to hear about this. So you might as well tell them.
Right,
in
exactly.
in a controlled
in a
environment.
structured way.
Structured way,
Right.
right? And so this is what we do. We actually introduce one social evil to the children every term. There are 3 terms in a school year.
Right.
So a social evil such as pollution, such as global warming, such as racism, such as addiction,
Okay.
such as, for example, poverty, right?
Right.
And for this particular theme now in this year
Okay.
is war. We're
War,
introducing them to
okay.
war because 10 countries out of the 57 OIC countries are actually in war at this point in time. So we're introducing them to the concept of what war does and refugees and how orphans
And the impact
are added
on
on. The
society.
impact on society,
Right.
yeah, it destroys everything. So we are introducing that topic to them. So about 4 weeks they'll learn about this concept of war. Then about next 6 weeks they are told to actually do a project to address the problem of war and the impact it has on society.
Right,
So some
I
of them will
see.
raise money, others will launch a project, others will launch a TV show, or some of them will write articles in newspapers, others will go on radio and speak there, others will launch a fundraising campaign, some of them will go to projects and sponsor orphans, some of them will launch a business. So they are inspired to do action in order to address that problem.
Right. Okay.
So can you imagine all of those problems that we identified and they have to address it?
So it's
with
all
the
about being
project.
very practical with the knowledge that you learn,
Correct.
not just about
Knowledge and action.
getting facts, right?
Absolutely,
Right.
knowledge and actions. First 4 weeks we inspire on the theme. The next 6 weeks we ask them to implement. And they
Right.
are required to. Every single child is required to, otherwise they cannot graduate from our school.
Right.
So
I see.
they are inspired on these themes, and this is very critical because it opens up their mind, gives them a wide way of thinking, gives them a wide world vision, right? And they understand that the world is not as tiny as them and their families. It's actually
Right.
quite a large thing. And those simple things that they were now becoming problematic, like, oh, I don't want to clean the house and I don't want to do any work at home, and mom's complaining that the child keeps buying shoes $200 every couple of weeks. You know what I'm
Right.
trying to say? Those issues fall away. Those are petty things that are no longer an issue.
They sort
Because
of
now-
melt into the background.
Correct. Because
Okay.
now the child is now worried about the problem of child labor in Bangladesh. He's now talking about how to end the war situation in Syria. He's talking about
Right.
the 2 million displaced refugees in Europe. You know what I'm trying to say? So you're now making this child think about a thing that is much larger than them. So this is the term theme.
Right.
Then we focus on all of these character skills. We call it the skills passport, where we
Okay.
focus on all of these skills that the child has to learn in order to become a strong personality, whether that be business skills, whether that be speaking skills, whether that be debating skills, conflict management skills, whether it be skills to do with For example, how do you give a lecture? How do you give a talk? How do you write an article? How do you write a newspaper article? How do you have a difficult conversation? So these are all these special skills. Even we also work on teaching our children how to iron their shirt, how to tie their shoelace, how to wear your tie, how do you eat a 7-course meal, for example. Right. So these are all these fine-tuning etiquettes and skills that the Japanese have really mastered in teaching their children. So we try and do that with our children as well, because that refines their character and builds in them that refinement as an individual. How do you sit when you're together? Do you cross your leg? How do you put your hands? You know what I'm trying to say? So all of these simple skills that we teach them, it's called a skills passport. Part of this is also archery and horse riding and swimming.
Right, okay,
and then
to keep the extracurricular also
Absolutely.
alive. Okay.
And all of this actually develops the child and their personality. Also the boot camps that they have to go to. So we have these boot camps that they have to go to, and these camps are not just fun camps, they're actually camps designed to remove their phobias and their fears. So a fear of heights, fear of snakes and scorpions, fear of the dark.
Right.
So they're required to go into jungle trekking, and they're required to be in the dark, and they're required to get comfortable with dangerous creatures. So of course in a controlled environment, right?
Right.
So we call it, that's what we call it, the boot camp, in order to change their personalities and to make them a lot more comfortable. It's a bit more of a scouts camp, but on steroids. Scouts. That's
just maximize the experience.
Right.
Okay.
So we want to build that sort of child. And the third portion is now the business skills, because we want children to come up with the ability to launch businesses, and we want them to find social problems, whatever they are, and to find sustainable ways of launching and solving them, whether that be a for-profit or a not-for-profit. We're not worried about that. But we want them to focus on a need in society and to find creative solutions in order to solve it, whether that be for a money-making purpose or it be for a social purpose.
Right.
And that's your business skills. So grade 9 students, for example, are required to launch their businesses. Some of them will launch food businesses, some of them education businesses, and some of them actually have made lots of money. Some of them, one of the students, I believe, made 64,000 ringgit profit. Half he kept himself. I don't know, I hope he did something good with that money.
Right, okay.
The other half he gave to charity.
I see.
So we encourage that. So and if you look at the statistics of entrepreneurship, the most entrepreneurial countries today is Israel, is Uganda. The most entrepreneurial countries, it's Cameroon is the second or third most entrepreneurial. In the Asian sector, the most entrepreneurial is Thailand. 16% of people in Thailand are entrepreneurs. Vietnam is another country that's very entrepreneurial. 13% of people in Vietnam are entrepreneurs. In Malaysia, it's very low.
Yes, it's still very low, even though there's a lot of exposure to it.
Correct.
Right. Now, all of these concepts, for perhaps the casual parent out there who might be watching us right now, I'm sure they are something which are fascinating and not only interesting, but something they may want their children to get on board as well. But I'm sure on the other hand as well, most parents would have certain hesitations thinking about, okay, so this is my child, I do want him to, or her to turn out to be the most holistic individual that he or she can be. But the question would arise, when is too early, or when is the time to start introducing these principles? According to the methods that you work with at SSI, when do you start teaching your students these values and also integrating these activities as part of their academics?
So it's such an, you put your question so well, and that is exactly the dilemma, right? When is it too early to give them money? I mean, I remember when I was a child, my father would give me $10 and say, hey, that's too much money already, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
The first time I made money was, I think, when I was 18 years old.
Okay.
Which was already too late, with all due respect, because then I didn't know what to do with it when I was making that money. And I was spending it and wasting it, and I didn't know how to save, and I didn't know what to do with it. I think the only time I actually valued money properly when it was already too late. I was already married.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
When
and then
it really came to crunch time.
It came to crunch time, and that's just too late, with all due respect. I feel it's something that needs to be introduced a lot earlier. And that's my I guess, my hypothesis that if you introduce it a lot earlier, then you have a better result. And evidence shows that, by the way. So the number of people that own businesses today in the world is about 400 million apparently.
Right.
That's what I was reading up on. And of those people, 1/3 actually launched their businesses whilst they were kids.
There you go.
Okay.
I mean, we don't often hear of overnight
Right.
success stories without a background, right?
No, and that's only small number. I mean, now if you look at in Malaysia, I would even say probably over 1 or 2 or 3% of school-going kids actually even think about entrepreneurship.
Yes, true
Right?
enough.
What if we made that percentage into 30%, 40%? Don't you think there would be a lot more entrepreneurship activity?
Very
And it's
true.
important. Entrepreneurs, they solve human problems. They provide income. They are independent people. They're not dependent on society. They are the answer to society's problems.
Right.
They are independent thinkers, and they are the backbone of any economy. So, with all due respect, this is something that needs to be introduced to people a lot earlier. At least to not make narcissistic, self-focused individuals. That is what our education is doing. I mean, look at the way education is today.
Right.
What's your grades? How many A's did you get? And what marks? What are you going to study? Are you going to be a
Right.
doctor? Are you going to be a lawyer? What are you going to be? You know what I'm trying to say? These are the only questions that we have.
And not to forget that whatever it is, the way the world's economy is shaped
Right.
within the next even 20 years,
Right.
jobs that we consider as professional jobs may not even exist.
That's right. And
Right.
and how many university-going students actually have no jobs?
That's right. Now, on that very pertinent note, time for a quick commercial break. We'll be back shortly. Stay with us. Wow, now very wise words from some of your young entrepreneurs there, Dr. Tawfique. So I think that was the perfect lead-in to help us, explore a little more on what is it exactly that your year 9s, as those students are, do in the year-long entrepreneurial program. So how does it get started off at the beginning of the school year for your year 9s? Tell us about that.
Well, if you just noticed what you just noticed there, first of all, 2 of them were
Right.
girls.
Yes, that's right.
And so you can see you're empowering people that you normally think that they are timid, they're going to just be at home, they're going to have a career, etc. You're empowering them to be quite different. They're going to dictate their own lives. They're going to choose what career they choose and their path that they choose. And the impact that you're going to have is very significant. One of them is talking about following their passion. The other one saying, I am the owner of a business.
That's right.
You know, so
exactly.
you know what I'm trying to say? Look
That's
at
a
the
perspective change, right?
perspective change. They're thinking very differently, and that's exactly what schools are meant to do. You're meant to produce these children that realize, hey, I've got the world to play with. I can do what I want. All I need is my values in my heart, and that's all I need to do. So this is what the entrepreneurship program does. It allows children to experiment with their ideas, to launch a practical business that makes money.
Right.
Right.
So literally to be not just handling that money, but be the one responsible for all of it.
Correct.
Creation
Service-based business, or they are trading business, whatever it is, creative or reselling something that's out there. They're allowed to do all of that.
Right.
They take their money. They control it. They have to bring the investments. They also have to have a Shark Tank, like a Dragon's Den type of feature, where they have to present their ideas and solicit funds from the public.
Right.
So they learn about the pitch. They learn about how to get their pitch right. They understand about cash flow and about marketing, about profit. They have to be able to solicit funds from investors and to give returns, so they understand value of amana and accountability. Human beings, how to manage them, how to hire and unfortunately let them go as well if they have to, how to pay them correctly. They have to understand about stock and about inventory and about pricing. So,
now, all of these, of course,
issues.
they honestly sound like a lot of what first or second year, even final year business students might be doing in university.
Correct.
Now, one thing that I can say is, how do your students look at the time management aspect of things? Of course, for the character development module, it's essential, as you said, you can't graduate from SSI without it. So how do they manage to not only do well, but at the same time not forgetting their 50% or so for academics and their 30% grades for their religious instruction?
Right.
How do they manage to holistically do it all?
Yeah, I think what I've found is that the children who get into it discover that they have a lot of time that they're normally wasting anyway, and they find that they're able to actually give that time to a lot more focused and passion, because here it's their project, their idea, their baby. They're able to do it. They can choose where their money goes and what they do with it.
That's right.
Does that make sense? So they actually find that time.
Okay,
whether
wonderful.
whether that be the weekends, whether that be after hours, they actually find that time.
Right.
Plus, it's not just about doing it yourself. It's also about delegating. So we teach them about how to involve others and how to inspire them into your vision. Because if you want to have a vision, you cannot achieve it without inspiring others. So we teach them how to manage human beings to be able to do that.
Right.
So a lot of children are able to do that. What we have found is that it doesn't actually cause your grades to go down. It actually sometimes, I feel, actually causes your grades to go up, especially if you're successful, because your confidence goes up. And you realize, hey, in this task, which is a lot harder, which other even grown-ups are afraid of doing, I'm successful. So therefore, what about my studies? I should be able to also
what a
beat.
Confidence booster, right?
Exactly, yes,
Right,
it does.
wonderful.
So what we are actually considering is actually to expand the entrepreneurship program a lot earlier as well.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, from grade 5 all the way to grade 9.
Right.
Because IGCSE O levels is in grade 11, so we would say, okay, all that time we want to teach children branding, marketing, and others, etc. And it's not just about business; it's also about social entrepreneurship. To find a problem, a bit like the school itself is social entrepreneurship program.
Right?
Yeah, it's not owned by me. I'm the principal, but it's crowdfunded from the public. It's owned by the Malaysian public, if anything.
Right, understood.
And it's like a walk-off type of school where the profits go back into charity again.
I see.
And so
that's
at the end of the day, I launched it because there was a need in the society for it. So in that same way, I hope to inspire our children to be able to do those projects, find a need, and then solve it with a project.
Exactly, like literally pay it forward from everything they're learning through the schools. Now, what we're doing is actually also playing a couple of pictures in the background, and these are all the different types of entrepreneurial projects which students from SSI have actually launched. And as you can see, there is such a vast variety, everything from homeopathy to, of course, F&B, and a lot of, as Dr. Tawfique said, social entrepreneurial driven projects. And I think it's fascinating to see that whatever it is, children, students are not just manning these projects, but they're the ones who conceptualize the ideas, and they are managing it just as well as any SME might in the Malaysian scene.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just the screen showed you what they're doing. You can see that they're actually holding stalls at a venue. They're managing customers, they're understanding, interacting with them, taking money from them. The customers giving them feedback, so they're learning. They also, if you notice, they've got other people hired around them. They're paying them money.
Exactly.
So they've learned to do all of this. And if the school does not provide that experience, where else will they learn it? Today, we have so many people who are graduating from MBAs. How many of them actually ran a business?
And not just theoretically.
Right. And so myself, I've not done an MBA, but I hire people who have done MBAs.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? And that's the world today. That today, if we actually give them that experience, actually the real world MBA is far more valuable than an MBA.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when better to start than in school itself. Now, as you said, speaking about students and how early on we should scale them perhaps. So perhaps give us a little perspective, Dr. Tawfique. How would your preschoolers or the primary school students also be participating in the skills passport as well as the entrepreneurial aspect of learning about it before they get into secondary school?
Right. So we have a skills passport for primary, middle school, and secondary.
Okay, right.
And so the skills that are required for primary are different from the ones in middle school, obviously different from secondary. So we tend to introduce business skills in the secondary. We would introduce more soft skills, for example, in the primary. In the middle school, that's where we actually focus a lot of education on. That's where we actually put most pressure in, because we feel that's the age between 7 to 14 years of age where we can really change their thinking. And that's before the teenager years, where they have a lot more independent thinking, if you know what I mean.
Become a little more rebellious naturally.
Little more rebellious. And incidentally, the more rebellious you are, the better entrepreneur you are, because you tend to not fit into the mold of others. You tend to want to do your own thing.
Yes, that's a fair point.
Right. And they say you're 3 times more likely to succeed if you are rebellious.
Right, there you go.
So we tend to harness those skills. So it's all dependent on the level that you're at and what we focus on. So as an example, in primary schools, for example, we would focus their skills on gymnastics and also on taekwondo, So on
Right.
building up their body. In the middle school, for example, we'd focus their skills on their performance in front of people, the growing their confidence.
Right.
Right.
Public speaking
Public
and so
speaking,
forth.
yes.
Okay.
In the secondary school, we would focus the skills on the entrepreneurship and in the business skills, right?
Right.
In the conflict management, people management, and that's our focus. Throughout the school years, every week we introduce the children to a hero.
Okay.
Yeah.
An outstanding individual. then.
Outstanding
Okay.
individual, like Malcolm X, like
Okay.
Muhammad Ali, for example. What made Muhammad Ali so great?
Okay.
And why was he so great? So we would start off the week on Monday at 8 o'clock when they come in. For the first 2 hours, they would actually take a lesson on Muhammad Ali. Who was Muhammad Ali?
Right.
What did he do? What did he achieve in life? And then throughout the school week, they would be learning a little bit about history, the design in the school, the pictures, everything
Right.
was reinforcing the life of Muhammad Ali.
I
Right?
see.
And then
right.
on the Friday, they would have quizzes. And they would have competitions against grades to grades on who knows
Okay.
more about Muhammad Ali and what Muhammad Ali did.
Right.
It's because we are trying to find people that would be inspired with the life of Muhammad Ali. And you never know who has been,
Yeah,
who
who
has
takes
what
a page
skills.
from there.
Right.
Yeah.
And Malcolm X, for example,
Okay.
another individual, or Omar al-Mukhtar, another historical figure
Right.
who was a freedom fighter against the Italians trying to conquer North Africa, for
Right.
example. So we would inspire people with those individuals and say, okay, who there wants to be like this? Who wants to also have write a page in history? Does that
Right.
make sense? I don't know. I'm hoping that we'll be planting some seeds in some heart somewhere, and hoping that some really great, person is growing up amongst us that is going to truly change the world. Yeah,
There you
and this
go.
is how we're trying to change people.
Yes, little by little, step by step.
Correct.
Now, I'm speaking of baby steps as well. Now, of course, children, students, they come with all types of personalities. And I'm sure there are also those among every school who are shyer, who may be a little more timid. Now, how do you, as the principal, as well as your staff, help to continue motivating students, especially the ones who may not generally be as outgoing or as receptive as some who just take to new things like, fish to water?
Right,
Not
right.
everybody does, right?
Right. In Malaysia, I think a lot of people are timid.
Yes, I
Is that
do
right?
agree with that.
Right. And they're quiet and they're gentle, introverts, right? And us in the West, we're more extroverts. 85%, I think, of the Westerners are extroverts. Or I think it might be the opposite in Malaysia, I don't know. But this is the normal, typical way that a child comes to Seven Skies, usually very timid, very quiet, very reserved.
Right.
But what we find is putting them in these situations in front of people to do projects where they have to present in the term theme nights. So after those 6 weeks where they have to do the projects,
Right.
it all culminates into something called a term theme night, where all the parents and industry experts in that particular sector
I
are
see.
invited to judge the performance of the children.
Right.
And what we find is these sort of things have made some very, very timid children into very creative individuals, and they've discovered within themselves the ability to perform in front of others
Right.
and to speak. And so this is how we have done it, through peer pressure and to exposing them through situations where they're having to express themselves in front of others. And we're finding that as long as they're encouraged, a lot of positivity, as long as they're encouraged, we find that little Johnny is now no longer little Johnny anymore. He's now Mr. John, and he's got this courage within himself
Right.
to speak in front of people. And very frequently parents come to me and say, my children have this confidence. I don't know where and what you have done, but you have been able to bring this inner giant within him and expose
fore,
it
yeah.
to the fore. Yes.
Right. Wow. Well, it's no magical formula, but what it is like a really prescribed guideline that you actually follow. Now, what would you say is the parents' perspective themselves? But what we'll do is we'll get back to that once we're done with the commercial break. So let's just cut to that first. Back in a minute. Thanks for still staying with us here on The Nation. Now back to Dr. Tawfique Chowdhury speaking about the entrepreneurial spirit that everyone can help cultivate in students, especially through the education system. Now, Dr. Tawfique, so as we were saying, what would be some of the challenges that your students generally face when they're going through this year-long entrepreneurial program? And are they generally open to coming for advice from yourself or any of the other staff members?
Yeah, I think they face typical problems that any entrepreneur faces.
Right.
I bought too much stock. I don't know how to price my products? Where did all the money go?
Right. Okay. All those little niggly
all those
things.
niggly things. They overpromised, under-delivered. How do I balance this with that? Oh, I'm too tired. I've got to do studies in the same time and that. So now you teach them that, you know what, do you now understand the value of this money? How difficult was it to raise that money now? You know, like all of my kids that have gone through this program,
Right.
they don't ask me for things anymore. They don't like, you know, I used to get that before.
Okay.
From my son Yusuf, for example. He would say, Dad, let me just buy this, you know? And it was 300 ringgit, you know, just like that. And I thought you just wanted something 300 ringgit yesterday. Now you want something else. Now they don't do that anymore because they actually understand the value of that.
That's right.
So that appreciation has come into it. So we help the children through those challenges that any typical entrepreneur faces initially, and this is exactly what we want to do. We want them to go through these problems now so that they know that, you know what, they can expect these similar problems when they launch it. And if they experience failure, then that's also very positive because they've experienced failure within a very controlled environment.
Right, there you go.
And they'll now know how not to do it. They know why they failed, and now they know how not to.
Exactly. Now, I mean, speaking on the foundation that you give your students, let's speak a little bit about your future hopes and your direction for SSI itself as part of the broader Malaysian education scene, which you are now, of course, a part of.
Right. I mean, Malaysia is well placed for education. It's a safe country, lots of educated people here, the ringgit's, you know, very affordable. And as a result, it's perfectly made for education. And the people are focused on education. We love to educate ourselves. Some very educated people here. So let's make Malaysia a hub for education. It's a hub for tourism. Let's make it a hub for education as well. And that's the future. That's the best investment. And that's what will get us the best results. So this is my focus. I'd like to have quite a large number of schools over here. In Malaysia, probably about 10 schools in the next 10 years.
Okay,
I would like to export this concept worldwide, and we are now focusing on launching our first SSI school in Australia.
Okay,
and we are also speccing it out to launch it in a Middle Eastern country as well.
Right.
So that's our vision at the moment with the schools.
I see, fantastic. Now, I'm speaking of the education industry more as a general topic, not just Malaysia-centric only, but what are some of the most glaring challenges that you see forthcoming in the next couple of decades if the education industry stays the way it is at the moment?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest problems we have with education today is that there's a big divide between private and public education.
Right.
So we need to bridge that gap. And one of the ways to probably bridge that gap is for the government to support people like me and entrepreneurs like us that are in this sector, that are providing the solution, because the more children that come to our schools, the less that they have to depend on public education that saves the government money.
Which is
they might as well
true.
fund us, with all due respect, fund our schools and provide, and because, you know, these private kids that are going to our schools are also paying taxes, right? Their parents are paying taxes.
Very
Why
true.
not do that? That would actually solve your problems, because then they would have a level of education that's better than public education. So the challenge for governments, I believe, is to orient their strategy towards working with social entrepreneurs like us, that address the problem of education, that have also very interesting ideas to improve the society through introducing entrepreneurship in education early on. And that have a level of excellence in this sector. So I would invite them to work with us and to see us as a solution, not as a problem, and to support us to be able to do that. Also, there's another issue, and that is that I've seen in the 14 countries that I work in the social service sector, that in Malaysia we tend to go into education for profit.
Right.
And we tend to want to see this as a business sector. We should see this as a nation building sector.
An investment,
An
really.
investment in our future. Because this is the one that will save us. $1 in education will save us from $10 in social service payments in 10 years down the track.
Right.
So invest that $1 now. We should see it as an investment. We should focus on teacher training. We should focus on school development. We should focus on curriculum development and making it a world standard. That is what's very, very critical. That is more important. We have Singapore just down the road, right?
That's right.
And they are #1 in the world in education.
Absolutely.
So how can we not be #1? How can we be 36th in education in Malaysia? That's something's not right there. And one of the fastest way to quickly reach that would be to support private enterprise like us, but to make it as a social enterprise, not for profits.
That's right.
I'd like to see lots of not-for-profit, socially responsible schools like us that are popping up, servicing the need of the society, because I think that is how we can, inshallah, that is how we can actually address the problems. I've seen this happening in Pakistan now. The government now is
working collaboratively
with businessmen to launch not-for-profit schools, independently run, monitored by a government body that ensures standards, but then that takes the pressure of the government and then raises the standard of education.
There you go.
Right? Exactly. And so this is very, very critical. It's a win-win situation for everyone. And this is one of the challenges I'd like to see. I'd like to see people to get into the sector for the sake of humanity and the sake of the country.
All right. So on that note, I think it's just the perfect time to come to an end to this interview. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Tawfique. It's been a pleasure.
My real pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for joining us and tuning in so far to The Nation. I am Tamina Kausji, signing off with Dr. Tawfique Chowdhury, Principal of Seven Skies International, and we hope you've learned just a little bit more about how education can truly help make your child and students of the future into holistic, useful individuals for the country and for the world. Thanks for joining us.